are there things that men can do that women cannot do? So, vote?
We don't have elections.
Okay.
Hey you, we're back with a bit more from Saudi Arabia. 2 weeks ago, I had an interview with my Saudi friend Jay, and I promised you part 2 a week later. But as I mentioned in the Tuesday episode, my computer broke, and I wasn't able to produce that episode. Now it's here, so let's dive into part 2 of my interview with my Saudi friend Jay. My name is Palle Bo, and this is the Radio Vagabond.
When I was in Jeddah, I walked around the old town and I took some amazing photos that I.
Oh, that's great! Yeah,
it's so stunning. So if some of these pictures I sent to my brothers and sisters, and one of my sisters said it looks absolutely beautiful. And then in one of the pictures, there were a group of women in full-on burqa that was in the background, and she said it looks absolutely amazing. I just feel sorry for these poor oppressed women.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
Good question, and this is one I'm actually good at answering because it was one of the most common. After how many camels do you have? I would get asked about covering and hijab and that kind of thing when I was in the States. So briefly, I'll give you at least what I was taught is the historical context within a religious perspective, right? So the time, according to my research and my academic background, the time when the hijab was adopted, which the hijab, the burqa, like where you cover the whole face, that's a cultural thing. The religious thing is the hair. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to cover it, but that's a cultural thing.
Now during pandemic, you can't see it.
But this came about during a time when the female population outweighed the male population about 4 to 1. Because of famine and drought and war and the lifespan wasn't that long, and so if a woman was widowed or for any reason did not have a male representative or chaperone, the only means for survival was commerce, was trade. She can't do most of the heavy lifting in a farm. This is no modern equipment. We're talking a very long time ago. And so the hijab was adopted to send a message, I'm not here to mess around. I'm not here as, a beauty object or something like that. I'm here to do my business. I'm here to do my work. And so eliminating the hair, because it's culturally one of the most romanticized features of a woman historically. And so eliminating that when she's in the market is sending a message: I'm here to do my work. I'm here. Take me seriously. I'm not here to mess around. Now, today, for example, my friend's sister covers. They're from a, I'd say, fairly open family. They've grown up traveling. They're very cultured and worldly, and she chooses to cover, and her sister doesn't. And her brother, my friend, was telling me they were somewhere in Europe, or maybe no, it was the U.S., I think, because it was post 9/11, and he felt very awkward that they were getting a lot of stares. That, even he said I was a little bit afraid someone would act out or something, and so he was basically pleading with her, like, please don't wear it, just for the time we're here, But for her, besides the religious aspect of it, I think a lot of women view it as empowerment. Now, that's not to say that some women don't feel pressured by their families to wear it or by their society. I'm sure that goes on. But that's the historical context, and I don't like to talk too much about it because I'm a man and not a woman, and I've never had to make that decision. I've never had to think about it for myself. I can speculate on it, and I can relay things that have been said to me by females here, by women, and how they feel about it, and how they kind of, where they stand on it. But I think a lot more people, and in other parts of the world, certainly it is forced, but here today, it's a choice. I mean, I could take you down, there's a park nearby, and, there's people on bikes, scooters, all this kind of stuff, and some women don't even wear the abaya, the cloak. They're wearing sports clothes and hair flying, and she could be riding next to someone in full, burqa, abaya, maybe even gloves, So again, this is, I think, we're seeing the two sides of the spectrum come and coexist in the same sphere. So yeah, I would say, yes, I'm sure many women feel pressured to wear it, whether by their family or spouse or the culture. But by the same token, I think many women also choose to do that for their own reasons, and it's kind of their own statement, and wouldn't change it. So, and I think, again, those numbers are much different. If you asked me 10 years ago, I would say, 90% of them are doing it, because they're pressured, to do it.
Maybe different again in 10 years.
And that may be different.
Yeah. But apart from the clothing, what my sister said, the poor suppressed women, are they poor suppressed women?
I'd like to introduce her to a few Saudi women that would dispel any notions that they're all oppressed. I'll tell you what, and this is not a generational thing. One of the things about my culture and what people don't understand and why it's kind of, I think, short-sighted to say the women are oppressed is, I'm sure as you've seen, and I wouldn't say it's unique to our culture, but I would say it's very, very prevalent in our culture, is the reverence we have for our mothers. Every Saudi is a mama's boy, pretty much. And there's some religious background for that, and scripts from our holy texts that really preach about, you take care of your mother. Your mother is more important than your father even. So if you start from there, and maybe to the West it looks possessive but protective, I would say, if you really want to start a fight fast, say something bad about someone's mother or their sister, and you will have a fight on your hands very, very quickly. It's a very volatile subject. And so, and again, I don't like to generalize, sound like, I'm not aware that there are, we've seen it in the press, we've heard things, I know that there are bad things that happen, but I would in no way say that's the majority. I think you just don't hear about good news. You don't hear about nice stories. You hear about the really bad ones, and you hear, and and especially if that's kind of what people expect to hear, then you're already looking for it. It's like a scientist doing a test, and he already knows what the result is that he wants to find. He's going to find that result. It's the same thing when it's learning. It's an experiment. And if you're experimenting with culture and you're truly trying to learn something, if you kind of know or you're predisposed to find something, you're going to find it. So I would throw that caveat. I know there are some unfortunate situations, but in general, the women in our family are revered, and grandmas, aunts, and as such, I think that extends to a spouse. And back when we were talking about getting married and what you're looking for, that's one of the main issues is, does this woman cover or no? Because it's very frowned upon if you marry someone knowing she doesn't cover, and then suddenly you decide, well, now I want you to cover. That's a major life decision for her, and you agreed on these pretenses ahead of time. And so you can't really flip the script later. I think that's generally very frowned upon. But no, it's making me laugh now. Yeah, the conception of a powerless, meek woman, I would say that's that's a stretch. Saudi women are not meek. The ones I've been exposed to are ferocious.
This episode is brought to you in part by this website called hotels25.com. If you're a regular listener, you have heard me mention this before, and I can't say this enough. This is a cool website. It helps you find the cheapest hotel rooms around the world. Hotels25.com. You should try it out. It actually works. Are there things that men can do that women cannot do? So here is a few things. Vote?
We don't have elections.
Okay.
I mean, we have for like some cabinet positions, but no, I mean, women run now for like council. I don't know what it is in English.
Own real property?
No, they can. Yeah,
they can.
Yeah.
Okay. Can they own a business?
Yes.
Can they manage men as subordinates?
Yes.
Can they ask for a divorce?
Yes. Just to be technical, divorce, we have kind of two terms, right? And I don't know, because again, the laws are changing very rapidly. So even if that used to be a problem. So they could separate, but to actually be legally divorced was the husband's decision. But now, if it's not a full divorce, we have a different term for like a legal separation. Again, it's a semantics thing, but short answer is yes, she can ask for a divorce.
And then when it comes to education, are there equal opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, when you came in from Merkad Airport, you probably saw the Princess Noura campus. It's the largest women's college in the world, and I mean, it's so big, they have a train, they have a little metro in there just to get across the campus, and have been given, I think, with the scholarships, that really picked up in 2005, 2006, to kind of have a cultural exchange, because, my father and his generation, the guys that went in the 60s and 70s, they brought a lot of culture back. They brought a lot of business and economic opportunities, commerce opportunities in the fields of medicine, engineering. I mean, not just from the U.S., but all over where people went. And so during King Abdullah, rest his soul, his time, that was one of the biggest public expenditures, was a full ride scholarship anywhere you want to go. So we had kids in China, Australia, US, Canada, England. They were just sending people at first. And when they had to be a little bit more selective, the easiest way for a guy to go was for his wife or his sister to get the scholarship. And then he could go as a chaperone and eventually join the scholarship once he was there. So I think there have been active efforts to improve the educational opportunities for women in Saudi.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about LGBTQ. That is not legal in the country?
I mean, I don't know.
Does
that
it exist?
It exists, yeah. I know it's not legal to get married. I haven't personally read a law that prohibits it or says you can be arrested for this. But I would say it is a very sensitive subject here. And it's one of those things that I think even fairly open-minded people and progressive people culturally, I think are still very reserved about that. I think it makes a lot of people very nervous. I mean, that's something where everyone's like, okay, and this isn't to put them in the same category, but I'm saying in the last 5 years, the big things that have happened. So, okay, yeah, women driving, great. Oh, we're going to have concerts now, great. We can be in public spaces together. That's awesome because, before, if you went to a restaurant, you go to McDonald's, and they still have it now in McDonald's, family side and singles side. Every restaurant used to be like that. And even if you go to like a nice Italian restaurant or something, even in the family section, you have partitions around the table so everybody can.
I've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, and you still see it, but now it's, there's other options. So all of this stuff, it was great. And when this topic comes up, and again, when I was talking about media, something people are sensitive about, because modern media, whether you're talking Netflix or Amazon or the film industry, any really major media productions, have taken active strides to represent all aspects of the community, whether that be racial, religious, or sexual orientation, LGBTQ. So I would say people are nervous. I wouldn't say hateful, but just nervous, because that has never been an open subject. I mean, statistically, it happens everywhere. You have people from that community everywhere, but never ever been really talked about publicly. And I think because of that, and this is my own speculation, and I'm not a representative of anyone, but from the conversations that I've had with people, I think because so few people here have knowingly been friends, especially men. Maybe it's a little bit different for women. They are better communicators typically, and so maybe, I don't know, I can't speak to that, but I know for men, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and his, well, I'll just say it frankly, he thought, Netflix has an agenda to indoctrinate, homosexuality or something like that. And, I'm a very open-minded person. My general opinion is let people live the way they want to live. If they're not bothering anyone, they're not hurting anyone, and who am I to judge? It doesn't really matter whether I'm for it. I'm for people being able to be themselves without anyone threatening them, without anyone giving them a hard time, without them being ostracized. Again, I think also, this one might get me in hot water. I'll say for me, when I went to the States in 2004, Saudis were not the world's favorite people at the time.
2004?
It was in the U.S. after 9/11.
Yeah, after 9/11.
And then there was, other things that happened after that. And I thought it was a shame because it was a misunderstood community. And that's why I was very keen to sit down with you today and do some myth busting. So whether or not, some people say it's not my job to be an ambassador, but I very much have always seen myself as an ambassador for both of my cultures, my American and Saudi culture. And I think with the LGBTQ, at least in Saudi, I think there's just such little exposure. And, with this friend who was saying Netflix is trying to indoctrinate kids, and I said, well, it doesn't work that way. I mean, you either are or you aren't, I'm a straight man. You could try to brainwash me, but it doesn't work that way, because I believe you're hardwired that way. You're born that way. And I said, well, do you think I could turn you gay if I really tried? What? He's like, no. I was like, okay, well, it's the same kind of thing.
I am also very, very straight, but you are a very handsome man.
Oh man, you're too kind. Thank you very much. I'll thank my parents for you. But yeah, I think because I said, you know people who are gay, you just don't know it, and I said the reason, and this has been my stance, and I wouldn't say I'm an activist. I wouldn't say anything like that, because there's people that really devote a lot of their time. So I'm far from an activist, but I just try to kind of logically say, look, here or anywhere, really, that sounds like such a hard way to live. You have issues with your family, with your community, depending especially on where you live. So who in their right mind would decide to make their life is hard enough as it is. Who would try to make their life that much harder, logically? So, again, it's even with some of the most intellectual people I know here and well-traveled and cultured. I mean, people have, I think, very serious reservations about that topic.
Yeah.
The Radio Vagabond. Gotta keep moving.
Having spent 10, 11 days in this country, I felt very safe, and it doesn't seem like there's any crime in this country. Is that right?
Yeah, safety. One of the things people didn't understand about 9/11, the tragic events of 9/11, the agenda was not. It wasn't against the American way of life. It wasn't against freedom. It wasn't. It was a social wedge driven between Saudi Arabia and America, because since the Gulf War, we've had a heavy military presence here, U.S. military. Mm-hmm. They came for the war and never left. We've had mutual exchange programs for training of our military and our intelligence. And so after 9/11, what most people didn't hear, or maybe it was a blip on the radar, the only time it ever felt unsafe here was when we had terrorist activities here done on our soil. That was the only time I think I've ever felt, unsafe. Like, I would feel safe really walking almost anywhere. 3 a.m, go to the gas station, it's not really a problem. I've never felt threatened, and it's not really just because I'm from here. 1, 2, our culture is still, as a whole, nomadic enough. So you talked about hospitality. We're also and it's something I'm proud to say about my countrymen, if you will. It's, if someone sees you in trouble, someone will get involved. Whether it's a flat tire or if someone else is threatening you, 4 or 5 other guys will jump in and help you out. I think it became a case study, but you hear all the time about. Became a scholarly journal, I think, or article, in New York in the 70s. That poor lady was stabbed a whole lot outside of her apartment building, and it was like a U shape. So after the fact, she unfortunately passed away tragically, but there was something like 30 different people who saw her screaming, and everyone thought someone else would do something. So it was a sociological study thing. Mm-hmm. Here, no, sometimes you'll see 2 guys get in a fight or something, and then you'll see 5 other ones break it up and tell them to knock it off. Complete strangers. I've been stranded, bust a tire, my car goes out. People stop to help you out.
I got stuck in the sand today, and
you pulled out.
Yeah, 5 guys. They just jumped over and helped push me out. And one guy, when I was doing the wrong thing in the car, get out of the car, I'll do it. And then he jumped in the car and he got it out. And that was not the first time I got stuck in the sand, and the other time people can
practice. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's very much a culture that does that, and that's something I'm very, very proud of.
And actually, you brought it to Spain as well. You remember? Mm-hmm. There was this when we were at the sports bar. There was a girl. I think he was drunk or on drugs. She sat down in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And nobody really did anything. You went out and talked to her to get her off the street, and I remember what you said. Well, people tell me I look like Jesus, so I better act like him. That was the quote of the night.
People know.
That was the quote of the night.
That girl. Yeah, I remember.
But I guess that's part of of course, who you are, but also where you come from.
Well, and it's also, we talked about reverence for women and feeling protective as opposed to possessive or in a derogatory way. At the end of the day, if it was me sitting on that corner, no one would probably want to bother me. I mean, maybe someone would try to steal my wallet at the worst. But as a young woman in the state she was in, a lot worse things could happen for her in that situation. In my opinion, worse than death. And yeah. So I mean, she needed help, and I would have done it if it was a guy, to be clear. But especially because I mean, it was a young woman, I had to take a time out during our conversation because everyone thinks it's someone else's responsibility or that someone else will do something. And I grew up in a very take action oriented culture, and especially because she was a woman. Yeah, it's a responsibility you have to.
Are there illegal drugs here?
Yes, there are. It's not as prevalent. I mean, I haven't been in high school for a while, but when I was in high school, I mean, I'm sure some kids did it, but it wasn't, kind of like you see, peer pressure. If you don't do it, you're a nerd. And at parties, you kind of feel pressured to do it. It's not like that at all. Like, if you want to get into that, you have to really want to get into it. It's not something that's easy for you just to kind of get pulled into. And because even, I mean, in my days in high school, drinking wasn't really a big thing. I mean, some people did it, but it wasn't something you did to be cool. It wasn't something you pressured other people into. It was something you did very much on the hush-hush, if you did. I mean, I personally didn't. My friends didn't. And we never felt like we were missing out or like we were, quote-unquote, dorks or nerds or anything. Like it doesn't hold the same place in culture that it does in other places. But that's not to say it doesn't exist. And we do have treatment centers and stuff like that. But culturally, I don't think it plays as large a role. I mean, when you watch any kind of movie that takes place in a high school or, college, that's always one of the, especially comedies, it's one of the tropes that has to be in there, doing drugs for the first time or getting intoxicated for the first time. Here, it doesn't really, it's not a rite of passage as much. And drinking is different than drugs, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's around, but I would say it's not culturally accepted by any stretch.
Yeah. But you mentioned drinking. Alcohol is illegal, and you can't get it anywhere.
Nope, alcohol is illegal, yes, but has always been around. And it's, I would say, definitely, that's what I'm saying. Like, drugs and alcohol is two different categories completely, because drugs are not tolerated really at all socially. Alcohol, it's been around for a long time, never really left. It's a thing that gets confused between, religion. Islam is a religion, and I'm by far not a religious scholar, and I shouldn't really be making any comments. But what I would say is, religion is practiced in so many different regions of the world. I mean, it's been disseminated all over the world in so many different cultures. And historically, even when it was largely in Arabian Peninsula, and then Greater Arabia, the scholars, many of which are accredited and respected, and have very different translations of scripture, of Quran, of the Prophet Muhammad's sayings. So that's one thing, to keep in mind. Alcohol, it's available, and more people probably drink than you would expect. And, but again, it's, there's people who, just like I guess anywhere else, drink on very special occasions, or some people only when they travel, some people just on the weekends, some people, just like anywhere else, you have different types of drinkers, but no, it is available.
But we're talking the black market.
Yeah.
You don't go into a shop and get it.
No, you don't. And we don't have bars. I mean, there's the the embassies, who legally, that's the only legal alcohol, is on an embassy. You're allowed to drink, and they have bars and parties and stuff like that. So that's legal. But, I think most people, if you're not bothering anyone, you haven't been driving while you're intoxicated,
or going around on the street,
or ranting or bothering people, harassing women. If you're not doing any of that, then nobody really cares, to be honest.
No. But if we look, see how it's working in the Emirates, where in Dubai and in some bars and some international hotels, you can get wine, you can get alcohol. With tourism opening up in Saudi, if we skip ahead 10 years into the future, do you think it'll be kind of the same here?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Dubai and really every other Gulf state, one of the things, it's not an apples to apples comparison, because Dubai, relative to Saudi, has a very small local population in relativity to their overall population. I mean, the expats outnumber them vastly. So it's a very small community of people, one, that you have to address the cultural sensitivity, the religious sensitivity. Saudi, by contrast, is a lot of people and a lot of different cultures, regionally and culturally. And so that's one thing to keep in mind. I think more than anything, more than a Dubai situation, what I think is more realistic is something like the Maldives, which is a Muslim country, which is a tourist country. Yeah. So on the island resorts, I mean, technically it's illegal. You can't bring it in, but it's available there, and that's handled in its own way. I don't know the specifics, but if you go on like the mainland or the main island, then you can't really find that in too many places. So I think
same with Malaysia. When I was there, I went to there were bars in Kuala Lumpur, obviously, but also in Langkawi, the island, there was a special shop, and I think they took a copy of, or they registered with my passport that I was buying it. So
it's the same in the Emirates. I mean, you have to be an expat, and I think you have to have a special. It's for residents.
Yeah, I think so too.
Something like that.
And I've heard rumors that there are shops out in the desert or in IKEA's parking lot.
They have like warehouses type thing. Yeah, I mean, not in the desert.
I haven't been there, but I've been to restaurants where
Neither have
I
I
could
just
have
heard
it.
about it.
I should ask for a friend.
I'll see what I can dig up. But no, I think it's something that has to be addressed, because one of the big problems is illegal distilleries, and a lot of people get sick, a lot of people get hurt from that, and it's just something. It's a personal choice, and it doesn't matter how many times you tell someone who wants to have a drink is gonna have a drink one way or another. And so, providing, I think there's a few scenarios. So it could be a Maldives situation. Yeah. It could be, well, we're not going to sell it in Saudi, but if you bring it in, we won't stop you. If you're not breaking any laws, you're not driving drunk or driving under the influence or committing crimes, fine. I could see a scenario possibly like that, because, I think when I was mentioning earlier about the scholarships, and so many people have, let's say, developed a taste, and, regardless of anyone's opinion, whether that's a good or bad thing with regards to alcohol, it's there and has to be addressed, morality aside. Yeah. It's something that is real and existent, and so we have to address it, I think.
Yeah. And speaking about driving, I've been driving maybe 2,000 kilometers in this country, and the traffic is crazy. And could you imagine there were some drunk drivers in between? That would be because it's not for the faint of heart.
No,
I've been told that it was worse a few years ago.
Oh yeah, we had the highest death rate per capita for a long time for motor accidents.
But then the cameras came, and that helped a lot.
Big time. The cameras came, and automating it and privatizing it as well, which obviously a lot of people didn't like, paying tickets to a private company, but it's a very large network of cameras to maintain and sustain, and that.
Yeah, but I just want to say to all the Saudis that listen, please stay in your lane. Don't pass me from the inside in the emergency lane. And for the people who make the roads, please give me a little bit of a warning when there's a speed bump, because they come out of nowhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a notoriously slow driver. I'm pretty much in the right. If I'm really feeling like a risk taker, I'll get in the middle lane. But yeah, I don't personally care for fast driving. I mean, it's unfortunate, but again, people and it still happens quite often, but everyone my age lost a friend in high school to a car accident. I mean, it's a very common occurrence. And I mean, even, when we talk about, a religion on Friday prayer, and they deliver a sermon sort of before the prayer. I went to one, and the sheikh was talking about the immorality of texting and messing around with your phone while you're driving, because, even if it's an accident, well, you're being negligent, and that could cause to someone leading their life, or an entire family, God forbid, or your own, and the pain that would cause. And so that's kind of, So the driving is. I'm very impressed that you were able to.
When I picked up the car, he said, remember there are cameras everywhere, so you get a fine, and so don't text while you drive, and every time you change the lane, make sure you use the indicator. And after having been driving, I'm thinking, lanes?
Yeah. Well, that's the indicator. The indicator, you want to kind of. Yeah. Spring it on him. Do it last second.
But I'm turning Saudi the way I drive. Yeah. Okay, that's the way you drive. I'm doing the same.
It happens to everyone. That's
I'm even using the horn.
Yeah, that's a quick learning curve. And we have signals like with the high beams.
Very close behind me.
Or even like if you're on the highway and you see another guy coming, and if there's a certain rhythm to it. Means there's a speed camera or speed check coming up.
Right.
Be careful till you pass it. But, I mean, even wearing seatbelts.
Or there's a camel on the road.
Or there could be a camel on the road. Like, that does happen. But I mean, even wearing seatbelts, like, again, it's education. It's bringing things, into the public discussion, that kind of creates awareness. Yeah. So, people younger than me, I mean, I call them a different generation, even though I'm just 10 years older, but while they have their own set of challenges that I didn't have growing up, or when I was impressionable, let's say, my teenage years and my early 20s, I think they're a lot more intelligent overall. I think in terms of things like wearing a seatbelt, being a little bit more aware about things. Let's just say when you grow up in an all-boys school, and you're just around boys and men and all your life, it makes you kind of have very much like tunnel vision, like you just get used to a very distinct type of society and way of life, which the other half, I don't even know what they're doing. I don't know, like you hear stuff, but the new generation, I think, and this is one of the things I really have to commend our leadership and our government for, is these social awareness campaigns that they go on, and they've approached it very actively. It didn't happen by mistake. It didn't happen, just kind of slipped into it. It was a deliberate effort to bring a lot of these issues into people's mind, and parents especially, because it starts with the parents. And because our family dynamics have changed, it used to be, common, you have 7, 8 siblings, maybe your dad has multiple wives, it's a very much bigger family. And you're getting much more now of like a focus on the nuclear family more than the tribe or the extended family, what I grew up with. And I think I feel bad for them. They'll miss out on some aspects that I got to grow up with on the farm and going out and meeting my distant cousins and stuff. But I think having the focus on the nuclear family, fathers being more active in the child rearing. I mean, like most of my friends, they drive their kids to school every morning because that's one of the few times they can have some one-on-one time. And so, I mean, socially, when you talk about progress, I think that's progress. I think that's progressive. It's in the right direction. So, yeah, whether it's driving, smoking, for example, I think less and less people smoke at a young age. I mean, when I was middle school, like most of my friends smoked cigarettes or hookah, shisha, or some type of tobacco. It's not like in the States where there's all these like posters in schools and commercials and so I think things in that sense are heading in the right direction. But also, and I know some people are a little bit uncomfortable with kind of how open it is in public mixing of genders. But when I was growing up, there weren't many things to do. So you get a bunch of teenage boys, teenage guys, and don't give them anything to do. You're not allowed to go anywhere. As a teenager, we weren't allowed to go in malls. We weren't allowed. It was just for families. So you get into trouble. You find ways to get into trouble to entertain yourself. But now you have all these sports complexes. You have concerts. You have, just over here, there's a park where road biking has become a huge fad. I was telling my Dutch friend, I said, in a few years, I think we're going to have more cyclists than you. Like everyone it's become a huge fad. And
even more than Denmark?
Well, give us a couple years, but you see big, there's clubs you can sign up for and they go out and they have kind of coaches / organizers, like kind of show them the rules of the road. And so and it's fun. It's a social thing. They go out, groups of, some of the groups are huge. There's like 40 of them at a time. They're going around. And, at first I was like, it's a fad. And then I was like, why am I saying that? Like, they have stuff to do. They have options. They have hobbies they can get into. For example, if you recall, one of my passions is music and playing music. And there just really weren't very good options for me to learn how to play music and to be exposed to music. It was, in a sense, I wouldn't say a taboo, but frowned upon socially.
Yeah, now last weekend there was a big festival, the Middle Beast.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, yeah. It's very popular and it's well organized. But again,
what kind of music is that? Unfortunately, I was not in Riyadh at the time, so I didn't get to go.
So I don't know who the bands were this time, but I know this year I've just seen the posters. I haven't been, but they have DJs. Tiesto came and like Korean pop, some big band in there, like all kinds of stuff. But all of that.
So was it both local Saudi Arabian music and Western music?
I think Middle Beast was more Western. I think most people went to see the Western music, but they have different venues. I think there was some Arabic music, but typically that's a different crowd, different venue. But while we're on Middle Beast, one of the other progressive things, in my opinion, is you see young Saudi people working jobs. Typically, you would see young people working anywhere else in the world. 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, impossible that you see a Saudi cashier or a Saudi working in McDonald's. Or it was always an immigrant, from a third world country that's working these service industry jobs, because it was seen as like people had too much pride, like, oh, everyone wants to be a boss or work in a bank or something. And so the work ethic, I think, has improved a lot, and a big part of that is mobilizing. Like, there were restrictions, but it was never illegal for women to work. But between whether it's a social restriction or constrict, or just for the fact of not being able to drive, even economically, you have half of your workforce that is not being mobilized if you need a driver to get to your job. So like half your salary is going to a driver, or you got to ride a taxi, which is kind of sketch for some people. But now seeing, I think, young Saudis in service positions, I think culturally is a very progressive move as a culture. And I think, so Middle Beast, I didn't go to that, but I went to another event, and I typically don't go to, just because I'm not big on crowds and stuff, but I went to one of these festival type things, kind of like a fair. And all of the staff was Saudi, young Saudi girls and boys. And everybody was just so polite. It was so well organized. So not only are they giving them jobs and hiring, and there's a willingness to do that, but the training, that goes into it. I mean, to work in the service industry, I think is really a cut above. They're very helpful. Once the stigma of working a service level job was kind of shed, and now instead of people being embarrassed that he works at McDonald's or he's working, taking tickets at a venue entrance or something, and everybody kind of said, what, no, good for you. Yeah. And they take pride in their work. And so, the same, I don't know if you want to call it camaraderie or helpfulness that you find when we're talking about if you're on the side of the road, that's one of the good things of our culture that I think is spilling into that. So when you apply the things that really make your culture great into other things that you're doing and other ways, whether it's your economy or your society, I think it improves all of those things if you can set it up for it to give it the chance to spill over like that.
That was my honest interview with my Saudi friend Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
You can call me P anytime.
Deal. Well, that was fun.
It's not his real name. He asked me not to use his real name just because, as he said, it's not important who he is. But I know his real name, and he was being very honest and open about life in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and how he views things. Let me know what you think. Please join the conversation on the Radio Vagabond on Facebook. You're also welcome to send me a message through theradiovagabond.com/contact. We got one more episode from Saudi Arabia. In that one, we explore Yanbu, Jeddah, and then go back to Riyadh, where I visit the Camel Festival with my friend Cynthia.
I'm surprised you still have batteries in that thing. Yeah. It's a good device.
It's the longest interview I've ever done in my life.
We'll see how it looks after editing.
This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotels and guest houses and hostels around the world. Hotels25.com. If you like what you hear and feel that other people should listen to this episode, please share it. Thanks for having me in your ears. My name is Palle Bo, and I gotta keep moving. See ya.
Radio Vagabond. Produced by RadioGuru.co.uk.